Today's episode of Lone Star Lawyers on the Varsity Podcast Network is brought to you by Varsity Search. Varsity Search specializes in helping small law firms in Texas hire lawyers and build great teams. So if you're thinking of making a move or your law firm is looking to hire, please go to varsitysearch.com and book a time to visit right into my calendar. Varsity Search, building great teams. Hey everyone, Daniel here back with you on Lone Star Lawyers. I hope you and your family are both healthy and safe. Now, before we get into this episode, I want to let you know that Varsity Search is currently conducting a search for a 3 to 5 year construction litigation associate in Dallas. So if you or someone you know has construction law experience, that is a requirement for this position. If they have construction law experience, let me know or have them get in touch with me, Daniel at varsitysearch.com. Would love to visit with them. Also, we are looking to add new shows to the Varsity Podcast Network and would love to hear from any of you who might have an interest in creating a podcast for yourself or for your firm. If this sounds like something that might have interest to you, please email me, Daniel at varsitysearch.com, and we can visit about it. All right. Today, we stay in Amarillo back-to-back weeks where our guest is the brilliant Jennie Knapp. And Jennie is a shareholder with Underwood law firm and focuses her practice on appellate law and litigation, often representing clients within the healthcare industry. Jennie is the president-elect of the Amarillo Area Bar Association and a Texas Bar Foundation fellow. And like last week, Jennie and I were in the same law school class, so I can confidently attest to her reputation, both as a lawyer and as a person. All right, with that, let's hop into our conversation with Jennie Knapp on today's Monday Mentors episode of Lone Star Lawyers. Jennie Knapp joins us now, and excited to have her come on the show. Jennie, thanks for taking the time to be with us.
Oh, it's fun.
Well, let's start off by just talking a little bit about how COVID-19 has been impacting you and your firm and practice. I guess starting with just kind of what the working environment's been like for you and the lawyers and staff. How's that been going? I assume mostly working remotely and from home. So what's that been like?
Yeah, I think the legal industry is one of those few that has the luxury of working from home. So most people have. I've been working at home since mid-May. And I guess like a lot of people have, most of our
Mid-March, you mean?
Mid-March, yeah, sorry.
Wait, we are in mid-May. Yeah, and I should say for everyone listening, because it'll be later when you hear this, that we're recording on May 14th for context of whatever's going on in the COVID world by then. So anyway, sorry.
Yeah, there have been a handful of people up at our office, pretty spread out, and I don't think they've come in much contact with one another. But the majority of us are working from home.
Yeah. And what's, has the transition for the lawyers and the paralegals and staff and everybody else, has that been a challenge? What's been easy about it? What's been hard? Kind of how people adapted?
Yeah. I personally, it was a challenge for me to get my technology set up from home. I think a lot of people probably had that same issue because I'm a lawyer, not a computer person. So figuring out what ports my monitor's plugged into even was quite the
right.
issue.
Right.
But I think everybody's set up now. I'm sure we had some hiccups the first few weeks, but pretty well set up now. There have been some really good things come out of it. We realize how much we can do online. I don't know if you'll have other guests probably say that exact same thing, but we also, had previously kept a lot of things in paper files and have changed some of those practices as well. There's just not a need to keep a paper file, and we couldn't keep a paper file now. So some of those things have been really good adjustments, but I think in the right direction.
Yeah. So it sounds like some of those you'll plan to continue on after this crisis passes and just be part of doing business at some point or at some level anyway.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. What about the interaction with your clients? What has changed about that? Maybe what new issues, if any, are they bringing to you now that they didn't have before? What's it been like with the clients?
We've had a slew of employment, and I don't practice employment law, but there has been a lot of employment law, a lot of walking people through the loans and grants and such, which is, again, not my department, but lots of people in our firm have been all hands on deck working on that aspect. My practice is litigation and appellate, and I will see a lot of issues pop up in the next year or two. Haven't seen a lot right here at the moment, other than my healthcare practice, which obviously we've been dealing with some of the issues in that context.
Sure. Yeah. Well, what about the legal community there in Amarillo? What has it been like with working with the courts, working with opposing counsel on the matters that you currently have, hearings and depositions and all that stuff? What's it been like?
For the most part, it has been shockingly easy to conduct hearings and depositions remotely. Part of that is that the hearings and depositions that have taken place so far have been the easier ones, or ones that you don't have just a ton of exhibits.
Right.
I think there are ways to deal with exhibits. I haven't had to learn them. I know other people have, but I think that's kind of the tricky part.
All right. Well, let's shift out of COVID-19. And you mentioned in the midst of that discussion, the practice that you have with litigation and appellate. Talk about the types of clients that you have and represent, and what your practice looks like.
So the reason I wanted to be a lawyer in the first place was because I wanted to do something different every day, and I've really managed to accomplish that goal.
Yeah.
And Amarillo is such a diverse economy and relatively small legal community up here. And I work at a great firm and just have an opportunity to work in a lot of different industries. So I have clients, like I said, in healthcare. I have some insurance clients. I have trucking, meatpacking, and some general commercial work too. Just a whole gamut of issues.
And speaking, you mentioned Amarillo. I did want to ask you about that. What's practice in Amarillo like? And for those that maybe are, have lived in the other cities in the state, or maybe in more rural areas, and haven't had a chance to be out there. Tell us about what it's like to practice in Amarillo, what you like about it, what's unique about it.
I kind of already touched on this a little bit, but we have a very diverse economy here. Typically recessions don't hit us as badly because of that diversity, which is great. And it also gives you an opportunity as a lawyer to represent a wide array of different people, which I really enjoy. Our community is fairly small. I also really like that, and get to know the lawyers that you're dealing with on the other side on a you get to know them pretty well and deal with them day to day. Very congenial bar for the most part. Everyone gets along, and certainly have your differences in fighting for your clients, but it's a good place to practice. Yeah,
awesome. I wanted to ask you too, just about in the areas that you practice. Are there trends or maybe new legislation or things that are popping up within the issues that your clients have in the last whatever year, or that maybe you're projecting into the next year that you're going to see more of, that people that are looking at or practicing in these areas should be aware of or know about?
That is such a broad question. I think we're going to see a slew of legislation. We'll see how much gets passed this next session, COVID related. That'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, sure.
I'm just trying to think off the top of my head. There were some changes to the anti-SLAPP statute that are fairly significant. The last session.
Yep.
Those went into effect September of last year.
Right.
That's on the top of my head because I'm writing an anti-SLAPP appellate brief based off the old law right now, but the new changes are fairly significant.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one that pops in my head. I know there have been a lot of legislative issues. The paid and incurred, the billing records affidavits, 18.001 of the Texas Civil Practice and Remedies Code was amended, and that was a really big deal too. So,
okay, great. Well, I want to switch gears a little bit and have you reflect back to your first few years in practice. What did you learn as a young lawyer that has stuck with you and has become part of who you are now and today as a lawyer?
So I always tell young lawyers this, and it didn't dawn on me until, I don't know, maybe a year or two into my practice. No one told me. But I finally figured out that my life would be a lot better if I would just get a copy of the scheduling order for the case that I was working on. Because
right.
I would get assignments from partners, maybe a week before a deadline and have, a limited amount of time to get some work done. And once I figured out if I would only get the scheduling order and know what those deadlines are beforehand, that would really help me out. So
that's a good one. Yeah.
I mean, that seems very obvious, but when you're an associate just doing the projects that come across your desk, it might not be quite as clear that that's important. And obviously, as you go on in your practice and you're the one drafting the scheduling orders, you become more aware of them, but certainly something to keep in your mind.
No, that's really good. Good practical tip. And my guess is there are people listening right now. That's a great, I need to get that, start doing that now. Okay. Well, thinking about associates that you've worked with and that have worked in your firm over the years, what are maybe one or two things that young lawyers can do to make a positive impression on you and on the others within the firm? And maybe on the flip side of that, what are some things they need to avoid? Yeah.
And again, to not just state the obvious, be a good worker and a good employee and those things. But what really strikes me with associates is when they are aware of the bigger picture. Think about not just the discrete research project that you're looking at, but how is this going to move the ball forward and the strategy of the case in the litigation? If there are other arguments that we can make that you weren't actually asked to look at, but you think they're good, put them in there. If you're worried about spending a lot of time on them, then ask, hey, what about this argument? Can we make that too? All that initiative and just taking ownership in the arguments and the theories and in the case is always impressive to me and gives me just some peace of mind that I have someone looking at this that is looking at it from the same perspective as I am, not just someone that's going to do the, one research memo that I sent and that's it. They're going to think about this case and how can we win and how can we advance the client's case.
Yeah, I think that's good to point out. And it's something that I've run across a number of times where, or even heard stories about where lawyers either get let go or maybe don't get the promotion or whatever. And it's basically they sort of, it wasn't that they didn't do what they were asked. It was sort of that was all they did. And that's just not enough a lot of times, unfortunately. And so it's a lot of that is that extra initiative, like you're talking about, that someone else is going to do, and they're going to stand out and kind of create that difference between the look and performance of the various lawyers, it seems like.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly something people pay attention to. I mean, when you're talking about, is this person going to make a partner or not? If all they've done is like the one project that they were given at a time, like, no, you need someone who's going to take ownership and look at this and that that you could trust if you gave them the entire case. That's who you want to be your partners.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. Anything that's an automatic kind of just red flag that you see in associates?
I probably have a lot because I'm a pretty particular person.
No.
Do you know the Enneagram numbers?
I do. My wife's really was into it for a while, and so I do know a little bit about it. Yes.
Okay, so I'm a really strange combination because I am a 7 for sure, which is like just all over the map and interrupts people and all these things. But I'm also extremely detail oriented and a perfectionist. So it's a really horrible way to be because part of me is saying, whatever, who cares? And the other part of me is like, oh, no, you didn't. That comma is italicized and it shouldn't be. So, but your question of things associates do that bug me. I mean, this is maybe just a practical tip, but I really did get irritated at an associate once because every single morning, as soon as I walked in the door, before I really could sit down and like get a cup of coffee, he would be in my office asking me questions and, asking me to think, telling me about his research. And his wife actually asked me, what could he do to be better? I said, just freaking tell him to not talk to me before I've had my coffee. And now things are fine. But that's just kind of a practical thing. Think about who it is that you're working for. And if they're not a morning person, please don't bug them with things in the morning. And if they are a morning person, maybe you need to get there early and have conversations with them at 7 a.m. I know people who are like that, and I've done that, when I was the associate. But kind of know who it is that you're working for, not just on a legal level, but just on a human level. And the other thing that is real annoying to me with associates is that they push up against deadlines too much. Because a lot of the work that they're doing has to be reviewed by, me, maybe another partner, and maybe a client. And so if they're pushing up against a deadline, it's just, it creates a lot of problems down the road. So, but get the scheduling order, be aware of what it says, and set your deadline, a week before those, and you'll save a lot of heartache.
Yeah, no, for sure. So we've got a couple things going on there. We've hit back on the scheduling order, and then setting the time ahead to leave room for others' input and changes and all that. That makes complete sense. And making sure that you become aware of the people that are around you and the way that they work and the way they like to work. I mean, it's just, and whether it's an associate with a partner or an associate with another associate or with a paralegal, like it doesn't even really matter. It's like, it's just being a good coworker, right? I mean,
right. Yeah. Exactly true. Yeah. And with the staff, I mean, do not treat staff like dirt, because honestly, they know more than you do, especially when you start. They're probably a better lawyer than you are. Right. And you can learn a lot from them. So approach it from that perspective and, treat them the way that you would want to be treated.
Yeah, no, very true. Well, as you've gone through the process of hiring younger lawyers over the years, what are a couple of things that you look for on resumes and cover letters? Maybe things you're looking for, maybe things that are, again, kind of red flags. What are some important things for you in terms of the documents that you review in the hiring process?
The main things that kind of two big things that I look for just initially is I need to know why they want to be in Amarillo.
Yeah.
Or we have offices in other places too. If they want to be in Fort Worth, I want to know that. Why? Do they have family there? Do they just they've always wanted to be there? What is their reason? And on that note, if a firm has multiple offices, explain which one you are applying for, because they're all different. And if you don't care, and you don't care if you're going to Dallas or Houston, maybe make that known, because it's different people looking at them, depending on what office you're applying to. So yeah. I guess number one, why they want to come to the city I'm in, and the firm some, although nobody really knows much about the firms. They know kind of what's on the website. And so, you get a lot of these letters that say, I'm really interested in your firm in the practice areas of A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And it's kind of just a summary of your website. That's not super effective to me. Yeah. But telling me I'm really interested in being in West Texas because, we always went there on vacation when I was little, or whatever the reason is. Like, tell me why. Sure.
Yeah.
And then the second thing is what practice area they're interested in. I know I just said don't list the website, but
right.
It's really obvious when people are listing the website.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. Yeah.
But if you really want to be a banking lawyer, put that. If you really want to do, commercial litigation, put that. If you don't know, that's okay too. But yeah, don't just be generic. Be honest to who you are.
Yeah. Well, and I think the point about communicating the reason and desire to be in Amarillo is important to know that you're talking about that like on the very front end of this process, because, I think sometimes when everything's happening, maybe just by resume or whatever, I mean, obviously they're not going to have a chance to put that on there, which puts it I'm saying this so that candidates that are interested in places like Amarillo, because I think it's common not just there, but also maybe in other smaller communities, whether it's Midland or Beaumont, or we see this all the time in these different mid markets and smaller markets. Is to the extent you can, unless it says not to. I mean, to add a cover letter where you are able to explain it in the documents that go in, or maybe even in the email that accompanies the resume, to talk about why you want to be in Amarillo. Because otherwise, like if you're Jenny and you're just sitting there with a resume, you have none of that context, and it makes it hard to want to move forward with that without that extra, here's why I want to be in Amarillo thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's important. It's important for us that we have people that really want to be here and not just, want to get a job, because we don't want to hire people that are here for 2 years and then leave.
Yeah, absolutely. And what about when you get into the interview portion of the process? What are some things that are helpful and not so helpful to candidates when they're interviewing?
I think, again, being honest to who you are. Don't be afraid of who you are. Don't try to act like somebody else or act like who the people you're interviewing with want you to be, because they're going to see through that. We're, at least lawyers, are trained to spot people who are not telling quite the truth. So
right.
We will know that. This was not a real interview, but it was a practice interview that a law student was doing, and he put on his resume at the bottom, they have kind of general interests. And he put, I really like finding good breakfast taco places. And so obviously, I'm going to ask,
right.
Okay, what breakfast taco places do you like? And he really didn't have an answer to that question.
Oh no. And
I thought, you're just putting that so I don't know why you're putting that. You don't even have an answer to the question. It's horrible. So, don't do that.
No.
But back to what I'm looking for. I think the best book on hiring that I've read is by a guy named Patrick Lencioni. I think is how you say his name.
Yep.
Yes, The Ideal Team Player.
Oh yeah, I've read it.
Okay.
Yep.
It's a fantastic book.
It is.
And I don't know if you've heard him speak. He's a genius guy. That book talks about the things you look for in hiring are people who are hungry, humble, and smart.
Smart. Yep. Emotionally smart.
emotionally smart doesn't mean that you made it through law school and graduated. And,
right.
Emotionally smart.
Yep.
And so really, when I'm in interviewing mode, I do a refresher of that book and really look for those things. I think if you have people that meet those criteria, it's just a winner.
Yeah, I encourage everybody to go read that book, to go through all of his stuff, because it's really good. And a heads up to any candidates that I wind up interviewing for any of my law firm clients, I basically use in some combination the Pat Lancioni interviewing guide and sprinkle in a lot of his questions to get at those humble, hungry, smart characteristics in the interview process. So if you listen to this podcast, you have a heads up on what's coming in the interview.
Yeah. And we didn't talk about this beforehand. That's just
we did not.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. No, that was awesome. That's where you came from. Well, the last thing I want to ask you about before we start to wind up our time is coming to a close here is on developing business. Because I think it's something young lawyers start to hear about at some point, maybe even in law school, but for sure once they get into practice, but aren't quite sure like when is the right time to do that, how to go about doing that. Do I just need to become the best lawyer I can and let the rest of it kind of take care of itself from that standpoint? What's your advice to young lawyers about how to start thinking about and start doing business development and client development work?
Okay. I personally think that young lawyers, if they're working at a firm and can, don't have to hang the shingle themselves, and obviously that's a different discussion.
Yeah, different. Yeah.
But a young lawyer in a firm that can do work that's brought in by other people, I really think should spend several years doing that and becoming a good lawyer and understanding just even communication styles with clients and how things work in the real world and a lot of practical stuff. I think that is foundational to developing business. Yeah. But young associates too, I always say, and this is something a mentor told me, get involved in one bar group, like lawyers, not obviously lawyers, but one bar group and one other kind of extracurricular board group that's something that you are interested in.
Yeah, right.
And so you don't have to join everything and you don't have to do everything. But if you can get meaningfully involved in a bar group and another group that you care about, I think that's a really good way to start the kind of business development journey.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And back to even we're talking about this when you were talking about candidates and interviews being themselves. I think one thing that that pressure that associates maybe can sometimes feel about getting involved in everything and can put them in places where they're not really interested and they're just sort of doing it for the business development opportunities only, which turns out to be counterproductive, as opposed to, like you just described, pick something that is that reflects who you are and who you're interested in working with and being around, and subject matter that you care about and all that, people you care about and want to help or want to work with, and do that and go all in on that, and that's going to be more productive and beneficial in every way. So I think that's good advice. Yeah.
I think too, and this doesn't come immediately, but after you've been practicing a little while, you have a feel for what it is that you really want to do. And more specific than litigation or transactional work, you really kind of get a feel for, this is what I want to do. I really wanted to do appellate work. I really like it. And so I just started telling people that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
And that's what I do. And some people ask, what do you do? I say I do appellate work and some litigation.
Yeah.
And if you look year over year, just doing that and getting the experience also doing appellate work. I mean, half my practice now is appellate work, and it's really just from telling people that is what I want to do. And that's, that's its own business development.
Right.
Get your elevator speech. That's what people kind of always say.
Yeah.
But it really is true. And you don't know that right away. And so I think people kind of freak out about, I don't know my elevator speech. it's okay. You'll figure it out kind of as it goes.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's good. All right. We've come to the question that you were most excited about, which is, what have I not asked you about that you would want to share with the lawyers in the audience?
I still don't have an
answer. We're leaving this in, by the way. I'm not editing that out.
I don't know. Call me, and I'll answer whatever questions you have.
There you go. Awesome. All right. Well, we've got some rapid fire questions to end our time. So if you're ready, we'll get into those.
Okay.
All right. Name one trait or characteristic that you most want to see in an associate.
Attention to detail.
Awesome. What habit has been key to your success?
Maybe this ties back to the coffee thing, but I read a book once. I wish I remembered what it was about mapping your energy levels throughout the day and working toward that. And so I do not, because I'm an Enneagram 7, I do not map. I do not have an actual written map, but I know that, right after lunch, I have a period of a few hours that I'm very productive. And so I do my harder work then. And I know I'm very productive at, 5 to 7 used to be before I had kids.
Yeah. Right.
That used to be a time I was really productive too. And so I would do kind of my harder thinking work then. First thing in the morning, I'm not super productive. So I do my answering emails and just kind of smaller things then that don't take as much detailed, concentrated that.
Yeah. That's really good. In fact, and there's another book that I'll have to look up because it's not coming to the top of my mind, but I will put it in the show notes as well. We'll put all the Pat Lencioni stuff in the show notes too, so people can access that. But that's good to focus your time in the hours that you are most productive. That's good. Favorite app or productivity tool?
Okay, I have two. One is low tech and one is higher tech.
Really?
Maybe. Yeah. My favorite app is my paper calendar, which I've talked about calendaring a lot, but it is really important.
Yeah.
But
so this is going to be funny. I really thought you meant those were the two different names of the apps.
No.
One's called low tech and one's called high tech. I was like, wait, what are they? Okay. Never mind. Those are the okay. Sorry.
No.
Back to the show.
No. My low tech favorite thing that I've done probably about 5 years ago, I started keeping a paper calendar on my desk.
Yeah.
And I do that because I have every deadline on my office computer as well, but it's hard to flip through on the computer to see ahead unless you go kind of day by day. And so I keep my paper calendar so I can look, ahead a few weeks and see what's going on. I just find that a lot easier.
So are they like exact replicas, or are there certain things that you would only put on one or the other?
No, my electronic calendar stays more detailed because I have opposing parties' deadlines on it too.
Okay. Yeah.
I only put my deadlines on my paper calendar, and then kind of hearings and depositions too. But my electronic calendar is definitely more detailed, but the paper calendar is really just for the things I need to know about ahead of time.
Gotcha. Okay. So that's the low tech one. So what's the high tech one? The high tech one is, and this is if you have a Westlaw subscription, and I think you pay extra for it, but it's amazing. It's a plugin to Microsoft Word called Drafting Assistant. Okay. And
it allows you to, it automatically creates table of authorities in briefs, which is awesome. But it can also, if you have, it can do so many things, but if you can have a document, you can say, print all the cases that are cited in this document, and it will do that, which is just a huge time saver.
Yeah.
And then it will key cite all of those if you want. There's also a way and I don't use this as much as I should, but you can highlight a sentence that you've typed and you think, I really need a citation for that. And you can then click, do some research and it'll like go to a Westlaw search for that immediately out of your document. So it can do a lot. I find it to be very helpful.
Awesome. That's great. I'm glad you mentioned it. I don't think I've had anyone mention that so far. So that's good. We'll have that in the show notes as well. Favorite social distancing activity?
I've really enjoyed going on walks because I've talked my husband into going on walks with me, and he otherwise really doesn't enjoy that much. But it's been really nice. It's been good family time.
Yeah, no, walks are great. We've done a lot of that too. Last one, favorite legal movie?
I think I'm gonna have to go with The Pelican Brief.
Yes. I think you're the first one to say it, but it's on our list, and so I was waiting for justification to add it to our movie verdicts list of episodes.
Check that off your bingo square.
Yes, I'm excited now. No, we almost did it this most recent time, but we pushed it off. But no, Pelican Brief. Why do you like that one? Why
do I like it? I liked it first when I read the book, but Julia Roberts did a great job with it. It's a really intriguing plot that anyone would go to such lengths of it, on a case that's pending in a district court in Mississippi or wherever it was.
Right. Yeah. That's awesome.
I just thought it was really well written and good.
Well, and that was in the heyday of the John Grisham lawyer movies / books, period of time. So we haven't got into it yet, but we will. So that's cool. Well, Jennie, thanks again so much for taking the time to share with us. We appreciate you being here, and best of luck to you and the firm and everybody out there. Glad to have you.
Thanks. It's been a lot of fun to get caught up.
All right. My thanks again to Jennie Knapp for joining us on the show today. If you enjoyed this episode, would you consider doing a couple of things for me? Would you subscribe so you don't miss an episode? And would you also rate and review the podcast in iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts? Also, don't forget, if you or someone you know might have interest in a construction litigation opportunity in Dallas, have them get in touch with us. Also, if you or your firm might be interested in launching a podcast, let us know, as we might be able to help you out with that and put it onto our network. So we'd love to talk with you about that. For all of these things, you can email me directly, daniel@varsitysearch.com. All right, that's it for today's episode of Lone Star Lawyers. Thanks again so much to each of you for listening. I'm Daniel Hare with Varsity Search, and we'll talk with you next time.